Alright, so in the second video installment of trying to catch us up to where we can be where the other class is when it comes to author of the day in Cicero, is going to focus upon the really genre of literature that flourished greatly in the time period that I like to refer to as early Latin literature. And that would be drama. Remember that drama was introduced into Rome by Livius Andronicus in 240 BC, and that drama directly came from the Greeks. If ever you have watched a movie or watched shows on a streaming service or television, the way or the reason that you're able to do that is because the Greeks were the ones who invented it. Originally in Athens, in the glory days of the 400s BC, they invented drama for a festival called the Dionysia in honor of Dionysus. And they are the first ones to invent acting. As a matter of fact, the very first actor is named Thespis in ancient Athens, and that's why we call actors today thespians. Nevertheless, at these festivals, these play festivals, like we have film festivals, the Dionysia, playwrights would bring three plays that would be tragedies. Now, to be a tragedy is obviously going to involve a tragic fall of the tragic hero, and it's exactly as you would expect it, always with a disastrous ending due to some overwhelming pride called hubris that a character would have, and then he would make a mistake called hamartia. And in the 400s, the three guys, the three great Greek tragedians that we have plays extant is a term I use a lot with author of the day, meaning that there's still stuff that they wrote is still around and available for us. There are the three great Greek tragedians, Aeschylus or Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Now, when we have Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, these three great Greek tragedians, developed over time was a new kind of play that started to mix a bit more of a happy ending in, and that is the genre that comes along also in the 400s in Athens called comedy. Comedy doesn't mean funny, but rather comedy means that it has a happy ending. And the first guy in the 400s that we associate with this comedy, that is going to have all kinds of humor injected into it, is a fellow by the name of Aristophanes. Well, even beyond the glory days of when it's all really invented and it blossoms in the 400s, both tragedy, with Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, and comedy with Aristophanes will continue and will develop, to the point of where, in the 300s BC, a new, different kind of comedy is going to be developed. In that, it is going to differ than the comedy of Aristophanes, which was often political in its nature, and often with social commentary in its nature of humor, with its happy endings. Well, this new type of comedy develops in the 300s, and one of the greatest proponents therein of it is this fellow named Menander. Menander is going to be incredibly influential upon these two playwrights that are going to be talked about in a moment, that are Roman playwrights. And he essentially develops, along with others, this new comedy that is described as what you see here. Now, new comedy has stock characters and stock plots. What I mean by that is that you have these stereotypes that pop up over and over and over again in these plays. Now, these plays, these new comedy plays, are known as fabulae palliatae. Fabulae palliatae. And the reason they're called that is that the pallia is the Greek dress that the characters in the plays would be wearing. And what Romans would do, Plautus and then Terence in a moment, is that they would take these original plays by Menander and others, and they would marginally Romanize them. And by that I mean is that they would make it more recognizable to the Roman audience, but still their Greek character was there. Often these plays were set in Athens. Often the characters themselves were Greek. But they would do little things here and there to Romanize it. It would be the equivalency of, let's take the show, the sitcom, The Office. The Office was originally a British show, but we of course have our American version that we have Americanized. Now, back to the nature of new comedy and their stock plots, is that they would have often a plot of children get separated at birth, they'd kidnapped by pirates or something like that, and they would become reunited at the end. Kind of like their stock plots in sitcoms. If I were to give you a premise of parents of the family in the sitcom are going off on a vacation, leaving the children alone at home, you know exactly where the plot of the show is going to go. They're going to throw a party, and the parents somehow come home back early, and shenanigans will ensue. That's exactly what new comedy is like with these stock plots. They would also have stock characters, kind of like in sitcoms. There's always the weird neighbor, or the well-meaning but doofus father. Think about these characters that you have seen before. Well, in obvious new comedy, you have the greedy pimp, the conniving slave that is always trying to earn money to buy his own freedom, the angry old man, the domineering wife, the young boy or young man that is in love, usually with an unacceptable or inappropriate woman, or a parasite who is always trying to get money off of someone else. Well, and by the way, your first embedded item is going to be Menander in this video. M-E-N-A-N-D-E-R, Menander. The first author of the two great new comedy playwrights that are writing in Rome in the early days of Latin literature is Titus Maccius Plautus. We just call him Plautus. And his plays, of course, over 100 of them that he had written, but only 20 of them are extant, are going to be characterized by truly holding to the character of new comedy. Slapstick, full of puns, wordplay, farce, stock situations, and as a matter of fact, his characters really aren't characters, but caricatures. He makes them exaggerated, and he would take these original Greek plays, he would Romanize them a bit, and these are the ones that, of course, out of the 20 that I want you to be familiar with. And you can read yourself, but you have the Amphitryon, which is all about the father of course, Hercules. You have the Mostellaria. Mostellaria is your classic, just like I described, a sitcom in which a fellow by the name of Theopropides leaves his house on a trip. His son Philarches is going to have a major partying time, assisted by the slave Tranio, who should not be helping him. But Theopropides will return, and to stall the master, the father Theopropides, Tranio says that the house is haunted. A moneylender shows up to collect some debt that is owed, and it's just hilarity will, of course, ensue. The Mostellaria, translated as the haunted house. The next play I want you to be familiar with is the Aularia. It is called The Pot of Gold, in which Euclio has some gold hidden in the house under a fireplace. He is extremely paranoid that it is going to be stolen. His daughter Phaedria is impregnated by Lyconides that Euclio doesn't know about, but Euclio is trying to marry his daughter off to this other guy named Megadorus, whose name literally means big gift. He's got a lot of money, who happens to be Lyconides' uncle, who's the one who is actually imprisoned. All kinds of craziness goes on with the Aularia, or the Pot of Gold. You also have the Rudanes, which is literally the rope, in which poor Polystra is this young Roman girl who was kidnapped at birth by pirates, but eventually she is reunited with her father, Daimones, of course, with the help of her pimp named Labrox. And the characterization of Roman comedy is that it has a happy ending, and that is exactly what we see here. We have the Miles Gloriosus, in which it is literally the glorious soldier. Pyrgo Polynices is your stereotype character of a braggart soldier, a soldier who is arrogant. You have Pseudolus, who is actually the inspiration for a character that will be introduced in Ecce Romani 2 book, the, of course, slave of the Cornelian's family that is lived up, or is going to live up to the characterization of Pseudolus. And he, Pseudolus, is your conniving slave trying to help the son of his master, Simeo, named Calidorus, the son named Calidorus, who is in love with a little prostitute girl next door. But unfortunately, he's not going to be able to have that relationship because the little prostitute girl has been sold to a Macedonian general by her pimp Ballio. And all of course, the just utter hilarity and crazy situations that, of course, come from such a crazy plot. And that's your second embedded item for this video, is going to be the Pseudolus. P-S-E-U-D-O-L-U-S. Pseudolus, which of course is the namesake of a character we will meet in the Ecce Romani 2 book. And then finally, the last play that I want you to be familiar with when it comes to Plautus is the Menechmi. It is the story of twins separated at birth, but of course we all know it's comedy. They will be reunited in the end. So, one of the two great comedic playwrights for Rome is, of course, Plautus, and there he is, and your other is that of Publius Terentius Afer, or Terence. He is going to be vastly different. And the way that he is going to be vastly different is that he and his plays are going to less concentrate on caricature and more so portraiture, a true development of his characters in his plays. He was looked upon by the ancient Romans as being a bit more highbrow than old Plautus. Plautus was your lowbrow humor and lowbrow literature when it comes to fabulae palliatae. Whereas Terence is going to be much more highbrow, and it makes sense that he would be because he is a part of the Scipionic Circle. It is a group of authors and artists that were supported by the general Publius Cornelius Aemilianus Scipio, the adopted grandson into the Scipio family of the great Publius Cornelius Scipio, who defeated Hannibal in the Second Punic War. Scipio, in this group of artists, would support them. They would obviously be inspired by each other. They would learn from each other's ideas, and so forth and so on. And as a member of such a elite group of authors, he certainly is going to have reflected in his works the sort of elegance and kind of sophistication and true literary development that we would look for. And as a matter of fact, Terence was the standard author that Romans included in the education of young Romans until Virgil comes along and supplants Terence as the guy that you would read. He only wrote 6 plays, and all 6 are extant. So unlike all the dozens and dozens of Plautus, we have only 6 from Terence because they were true works of literature and considered to be highbrow literature, sophisticated literature. These are they. He wrote the Andria, which is the girl from Andros, the Hecaira, which is the mother-in-law, the Het Auton Timarumenos, which is the self-torturer that contains the famous quotation of Terence, Homo sum, humani nihil a me alienum puto, I am a human, nothing of humanity do I think is foreign to me. So in other words, I'm part of the greater human race. The Eunuchus, which is the eunuch, Formio, and then the Adelphoi, which is the brothers. So good old Terence, a member of the Scipionic Circle, and his plays different from Plautus because his plays are going to be not an exaggeration of the characters, but an actual development of the characters. He focuses on relationships and emotions, and his plays were often more faithful to the Greek originals that they were based upon. He did not Romanize it up as much as Plautus, and Plautus might have been perhaps with the general public more popular, but with those that were of the learned section of Rome, Terence would have been the fellow. So the Fabulae Palliatae, which of course are the plays of new comedy taken from the Greek originals, so called because of the dress. The two great authors are Plautus and Terence. And in our next installment, our third video, we will talk about some authors that write Fabulae Praetextae, or the plays based on Roman history, because that is the type of toga that those that held imperium. Your third and final item is the play of Terence listed here, the Andria, Andria, the girl from the island Andros, and that is your third and final one. So we have one more video to get us caught up to speed, and then essentially we will begin with author of the day in earnest with Cicero.